This is Techie and the Biz, a podcast to explain and simplify how business technology is changing and why it can benefit your organization. Today, we are going to discuss the topic of deepfake. Deepfake has been making headline news almost every day, and it's top of mind for most companies and consumers. Deepfake is defined as artificially created video and audio clips in which artificial intelligence, AI, is used to replicate and manipulate the voice and image of a subject so that the subject appears to say whatever the creator wishes them to say.
We are excited to be joined today by one of the world experts on the topic and the author of the book Deep Fakes. Nina Schick is one of the first globally recognized experts on generative AI. She is the founder of an AI consulting firm, Tamang Ventures, advising businesses and governments, including the US and NATO. She's spoken to audiences at major venues around the world, from CES and TEDx to Microsoft, Adobe, DARPA, and the United Nations. Nina appears regularly on prominent media such as the BBC, Bloomberg, and CNBC. Welcome, Nina.
Welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
How did you end up as the world expert in generative AI? Has this always been your career path?
Well, I think just like with many good things into life, I just kind of stumbled onto it, right? For me, really, the story starts with my background in geopolitics, where for kind of 2 decades, I was working with global leaders, various political groups, campaign groups on kind of seismic political issues shaping the world, from Russia's early annexation of Ukraine all the way back in 2013, the shooting down of MH17, election interference in the US and also around Europe. So the predominant, I also worked on Emmanuel Macron's electoral campaign in Europe. So the predominant theme of my political career was really how technology was transforming not only macro geopolitics, but also how it was reshaping the individual experience of everybody alive, pretty much, and how quickly this had happened. So exponential technology became something I was very interested in. And for me, the logical next step when you think about exponential technologies was artificial intelligence. And it was at the end of 2017 when I encountered this, at the time, really new form of artificial intelligence. If you think about traditional artificial intelligence, it's more AI that can classify or label data. And this was a new type of AI that could actually create or generate data. And the first kind of viral form of this AI was so-called deep fakes. I call deep fakes the first viral form of generative AI. But I kind of had this aha moment back in 2017 when I realized that this was going to be so important. And I decided not only to write a book about it, but spend kind of the years since then just digging into this field, which is now known as generative AI. So it's been very fascinating to see how in the past 6 months, the entire world now has come to understand that this is actually a technology that's going to transform everything.
Why is it getting harder to spot deepfake video content? And I also find it's interesting that deepfake is emerging at a time when video and media content are a large part of our communication.
So deepfakes, again, like if you conceive of them as the first viral form of generative AI. So they are relatively nascent, right? So when it became possible for AI to actually create new data, enthusiasts started using that AI to start creating synthetic or AI-made video. Now, it turns out that generative AI has the capability to generate anything based on its training data, and that includes human biometrics. So often when we're talking about deep fakes, we're talking about AI-made media, including video, which synthesizes the biometrics of authentic people, or it could actually be completely synthetic, i.e. AI-generated people. Now, this was pretty rudimentary back in 2017. So to the naked eye, you might spot that a video is not authentic because the technology was just nascent and evolving. A few years down the line, because the capabilities of generative AI and by extension, also deep fakes are exponentially better. So anything you look at right now in terms of sophisticated AI generated content, including deepfake videos emulating a real person, there is no way that you'd be able to tell that that video is synthetic and not authentic. And the reason is because the AI is just so darn good at creating synthetic media.
Wow. What is, I'm curious, the most common use for deep fakes that consumers and businesses really need to look out for now that you're obviously saying like it's almost impossible to spot the difference?
Yeah, it's impossible to spot the difference. Just like with the internet, the first use case of deepfakes, right? When it became possible to kind of clone people's biometrics with AI, the first pioneering use case was in pornography. Now, this is a really horrendous use case, which is universally targeted against women. So it's this undeniably gendered phenomenon. That was the first use case that was emerging at the end of 2017. And at the time, I understood that this wasn't just a tawdry women's issues, because if you take the concept of being able to hijack someone's biometrics with AI to appropriate them saying and doing things that they never did, this becomes a civil liberties issue. So very quickly from pornography, we've seen malicious deepfakes being used for synthetic fraud in kind of cyber attacks, also to emulate kind of the CEOs of large corporations. So it very quickly moves from pornography into not only mis and disinformation, but also into fraudulent attacks and penetration attacks into companies.
Wow, I've actually also been watching on the news almost daily now.
And political
audio deepfakes. Yeah. But even just the audio deepfakes, they're using AI to sound like family members to con people out of money. I mean, this seems like it's becoming almost standard now.
Yeah. So when I wrote my book, one of the things, and it's so interesting because it's fascinating to reflect on how quickly the capabilities of this technology have become normalized, in the sense that at 2017, the mere concept, that AI could actually create highly compelling media that looked authentic, including video, which is traditionally so difficult to doctor, including audio, which again is traditionally so difficult to doctor when you think about synthesizing somebody's voice, it would have seemed impossible. But now, not only is it possible, but it's becoming democratized. And one of the really interesting things about deepfakes, and actually all generative AI, is that they can come in any form of digital media. So it can be audio, video, images, and text. And what you're talking about, the kind of audio impersonations of people's voice, so-called vishing, voice phishing, is increasingly being used as a tool of fraud, because all that you need as these systems become better at generating content is training data. And in this case, if what I'm trying to do is hack your voice, right? To clone your voice, I'll need some training data of your voice. Now, in 2017, when I started looking at this, to clone somebody's voice, you needed hours and hours of training data. So you couldn't just clone anybody's voice. You would need somebody who has a lot of kind of public recordings out there, maybe a politician, and it would be incredibly expensive because you need to kind of compute all of that. And you need this model to create a recreation of a single person's voice. Now the models have become much more sophisticated, the base models, and it means that anybody's kind of voice can be cloned with up to as little as 3 seconds of training data. So that's one voicemail, one YouTube video, one LinkedIn post, one phone message. And that is potentially enough for your voice to be cloned with artificial intelligence. Of course, the democratization element of this means that whereas a few years ago, this was only possible by very sophisticated actors who had, some know-how and some money and some resource, now it's possible pretty much for anybody to do it, as well as anyone to be targeted. Which is why you see it being used in that kind of age-old scam, right? Yeah. Somebody calling you saying their loved one has been in an accident or they're in prison. And how much more convincing is that call when it's actually their voice? Are you going to turn your son away or your daughter away or your husband away when it really sounds like you're speaking to them like, hey, I need $2,000 right now. I need to be bailed out of jail. Okay, you're not going to take the chance, you're going to pay it, right? So an age-old scam becomes highly personalizable and even more effective. And these scams were effective anyway, without even vishing involved.
Yeah, it just adds one more layer of credibility. That makes perfect sense. So is deepfake success based solely on the technology, or is it our own brain interpreting what it sees or hears? Is that what's causing the problem?
I mean, it's both, right? Because on one hand, the sophistication of the technology makes it all so more convincing, because you can actually hear somebody's voice. You can actually see them in a video saying or doing something, right? This is a cognitive bias we have that's called processing fluency. When something looks and sounds like it's right, you want to believe that it's true. This is one reason why video, for example, is so compelling as evidence in a court of law, because people tend to see it as an extension of their own perception. If it's captured on video or got the audio soundtrack, it must be true. So there's certainly that element. Nonetheless, I mean, scams and disinformation, misinformation are age-old problems that go hand in hand with the very kind of birth of civilization itself. And you didn't even need vishing or sophisticated AI-generated videos before people were already falling for online scams or mis or disinformation. And before the internet, this was happening in a kind of analog age as well. However, the scalability and the democratization and the sophistication is really what makes deepfakes different.
Oh, interesting. The processing fluency. So it's really your brain wants to see. It sees what it wants to see. The brain sees what it wants to see.
Yeah, or it wants to believe what seems plausible, right? You saw it with your own eyes. You heard it with your own ears. Ergo, it must be true.
So I guess it's like those mirrors at high-end hotels that make you look so much better than you do in a normal mirror.
I do love those mirrors.
Those are great mirrors. The original form of AI.
Right. It seems the rules that do exist in the US are largely aimed at pornographic and political deepfake and not protecting everyone else. Are there any regulations to protect companies and consumers from becoming victims of deepfake, both in the US and globally?
So, not that I know of. I think that when deepfakes first started emerging, the initial fear was that they would be used for political disinformation, right? And we've already seen that happen now in the last few years, whether it's kind of that deepfake video of President Zelensky of Ukraine surrendering and telling the soldiers to kind of lay down their weapons at a crucial point when the invasion of Ukraine by Russia had just started, to numerous kind of deepfake videos of political figures in the US, from Donald Trump to Joe Biden, you name it. We see it in the political discourse. And I think that is reflected also kind of in the policy and the regulation that we've seen. So I think that various states in the United States have passed laws to do with electoral interference and deepfakes. I think California is one, Texas is another, I think New York might be another one. But the thinking on protecting consumers, about having their identities hijacked in this way, or really their civil liberties attacked in this way, we just really haven't seen that yet. We've seen something in the UK around non-consensual pornography through the use of AI, but that's kind of been tied into revenge porn. And to me, the kind of broader issue that this raises, kind of the lack of policy or the lack of regulation, is we're just in this era of exponential tech-led change. So even for lawmakers, or more broadly for society to kind of wrap their heads around what is happening and how quickly it's happening, and then try to pass policies to regulate it, is super, super difficult, right? Because the pace of change is so quickly. Again, the advances in AI that led to deepfakes and now kind of generative AI have all really started unfolding in the last 5 years. And second, when you think about deepfakes and actually you just take a step back and you see deepfakes as one of the first kind of malicious use cases of now what has become the much broader field of generative AI, which isn't all malicious, not at all. You know, it's something that's going to completely transform the economy and the future of all knowledge work, to try and put regulatory frameworks around something that's going to have such a profound impact on society, also in terms of huge potential economic abundance, changing the labor market, just like I say, changing the frameworks of society, is a huge thing to kind of bite off and chew. So yeah, we're starting to see a few things. Haven't really seen that much around consumer rights protection, but the bigger issue, I think, is just the kind of scale of and pace of change.
Right. Yeah. With the upcoming election in the United States, what are some deep fakes we should be worrying about?
So love a US election. It's going to be very, very interesting. Oh my God. I mean, I am a keen proponent of, you know, your country's politics, and it's always fascinating to see what unfolds. And the last few years have been very eventful, to say the least. Now, what you've seen in the past
That's
few
a great
years,
term, by the way, eventful.
Yeah, very eventful, colorful, loud. This, you've seen how the entire kind of information ecosystem around the election, and just more broadly, if you think about the kind of polarizing trends in discourse in the United States, you've seen how online the discourse has become very polarized, and there's been a lot of mis and disinformation. This was true even before AI generated content or deep fakes were in the game, right? But like I said, deep fakes or AI generated synthetic content is just so much more powerful. So we've already started to see manipulated media of politicians saying and doing things. We've actually already seen campaigns start to use AI generated content. So I think there was a campaign video by the RNC, which depicted a dystopian future in which Biden won the re-election and what, you know, kind of the US would look like. And I think that the Democrats will probably start using AI generated content in their campaign messaging as well. So that's already fair game. You can now use AI generated content depicting scenes, depicting audio, depicting people saying and doing things that kind of never happened, or imagining a future scenario, which, you know, is really fascinating. It's already fair game in campaign material. But also, I think increasingly, given how polarized the state of debate is in the country, as we get closer and closer to that election day, we're going to start to see more and more manipulated content. And of course, if it's manipulated by AI, it's going to be increasingly sophisticated. And I think that you will definitely see videos emerging where people are combating whether it's true or not. So you'll have people debunking those videos saying, oh, well, that's just a deep fake, whilst others will be like, no, it's not, it's authentic. And this is actually one of the biggest issues with the proliferation of deepfakes, or more broadly about AI generated content, is that you lose your ability to discern what's authentic or what's not. Because it's not only that everything can be synthesized or created with AI, it's also that once you understand that AI can create any video of anyone saying or doing anything, or clone anyone's voice, how do you know that anything's real? So even if something is real, you might be more likely to be like, yeah, well, I don't think that's real. I think that's a deep fake. So it's kind of the corrosion of just any kind of trust in the medium of digital content.
Yeah, I've heard you mention
politically.
Yeah, I've heard you mention in the past that phenomenon called liar's dividend,
Exactly.
in which someone can get away with lying by just saying, hey, that's fake news. And the media attempts to expose the lie, and then it backfires and only makes the lie sound even more credible. So the instigator of the lie subsequently becomes the benefactor of the outcome of it.
Exactly. And that happened even before deep fakes, right? Really, because we know who coined or who kind of lobbied the term fake news into international stardom, shall we say. And that individual was doing that long before deepfakes were even the scenario. But now to say, hey, that's fake news, that's fake, that's not real, you have more plausibility, right? You have more credibility to deny.
Is it fair to say it's like that old folktale, the emperor has no clothes? Remember that?
I actually thought the book was called The Emperor's New Clothes. In that case, I guess the liar's dividend goes to the tailor that sold the emperor his suit.
Max that they taught many, many years ago. But regardless, I definitely can see how liar's dividend has been used in politics for sure.
Yeah, I think just politics is going to become an even dirtier game. So I wouldn't want to be a politician.
Definitely not. Microsoft and Adobe are two companies now trying to authenticate media and train tech to recognize the inconsistencies that mark fake content. They're always in this race against the deep fake creators, though, who are constantly discovering new ways to avoid these systems. So how do we create laws when technology will have already evolved again before the law is even enforced?
Yeah. So I'm going to unpack that because I think there's there's two parts in my answer. So first, about the laws, very, very difficult, right? Especially when you consider this unique kind of juncture in history that we're at, where we have exponential technology. And this technology is coming faster than any technology we've ever known before. We've already seen the pace of technological change over the past 30 years since kind of the advent of the internet and the proliferation of the internet, smartphone, and cloud, how quickly everything has changed from our personal lives to the labor market, to the economy, to the world. And I think AI is going to be many magnitudes more significant in terms of its impact, not least because I think the technology is more capable, it's accelerating quicker, and I would actually say it's going to be adopted even quicker. So if you're a lawmaker, very, very difficult to kind of conceive of the right frameworks to make the regulation for a world that's going to transform so quickly. So I guess you have to think about it from a principles viewpoint rather than and mitigating risk and kind of also tapping into opportunity. But we could spend 3 hours kind of talking about the right way to from a regulatory approach. It's going to be difficult. The second part, which is about authentication, this is really interesting because when I first started getting into the world of deepfakes, our initial, the very, very early days, we initially, or the community who was engaged around this initially thought, well, what we need to do is to build a deepfake detector. So we need to get AI to detect AI so we know, so the technology can tell us when something is synthetic, when it's generated by AI. In practice, that's very difficult to do because it's always an adversarial race, right? So just when your detectors can detect some AI content, the kind of generators of that AI content figure out how to beat the detectors and yada, yada, yada. And there may even be a point where the generators are so sophisticated that the detectors can no longer figure out in the DNA of something, whether it's generated by AI or not. So it might just be a fool's errand. Secondly, you can never build a detector that's one size fits all because there are so many different forms of AI generated content, so many hundreds of thousands of different models. So if you think you can just build like, this is the one size fits all AI content detector, well, it's just never going to work. And finally, because of the way these detectors work, which is just that they give you a probability how likely something might be generated by AI or not, there's always a chance for a false negative or a false positive. So yeah, we're 90% sure that that's an AI generated video, but there's always that 10%. So rather than thinking about the detection approach, which is one approach and should be, I'm not saying that that approach should be dropped. It's just kind of one line of defense. A more kind of strategic and fundamental way to think about it is to inbuild transparency into the very kind of architecture of the internet itself. So you talked about authentication, and it's really important question to talk about because when initially deepfakes started emerging, there was increasingly a growing sense of, okay, so the early kind of pioneers in the community who were looking at this form of AI generated content and how it might impact information integrity. And the potential existential fear was like, once AI generated content starts proliferating, how will we determine what's synthetic or what's authentic? How are we going to know if it's AI generated or not? And initially, minds were turned to detection as a kind of silver bullet to solve this problem. So we will build an AI detector that will be able to figure out which content is made by AI. And so we'll be able to distinguish between synthetic and authentic. It sounds good in theory, but in practice, it's actually really, really difficult. First, because this is always going to be an adversarial game. As soon as you build an AI detector, which is able to detect AI generated content, the generator will get better and will be able to beat the detector. So this is always this adversarial game. And hypothetically, there will even come a point where the generators become so sophisticated that it is simply not possible for an AI detector to detect something in the DNA of a piece of content that suggests it's synthetic or AI made. So, at that point, the game is up. Second, because there are so many models and mediums and ways now of generating AI made content, there is no single one size fits all detector. It's just not possible to deploy, your magic content detector in the wild and it'll be able to detect all AI made content. Third, because of the way these detectors work, they can only give you a percentage of how confident they think that piece of content is made by AI. So, we are 90% confident or 70% confident that this video is generated by AI. So there's always a chance of a false negative or false positive. What if you're in the 10% chance that it isn't detected by AI? What if you're in the 30% chance that it isn't AI generated? So it becomes very, very difficult to deploy at scale, and it's not enough of a solution when you think about safeguarding information integrity, which is going to become a very important question going forward for the entire information ecosystem and the entire digital ecosystem. So a second approach then, if detection isn't kind of the silver bullet solution, although it'll remain kind of one form of resilience building, is this idea of content credentials or authentication. And this is the idea of embedding kind of transparency into the core architecture of the internet itself so that anybody, any consumer, any organization, any actor online can see the provenance of where the content and the information came from so that they can make their own trust decision based on that contextual information. So you're not in the game of saying this is true or this is not. Moreover, given that so much content is going to be synthetically generated or made by AI, which is not malicious, it's not kind of malicious deepfake content, it's legitimate, it is really important that we can demonstrate the origins of AI-made content, which is not malicious. So when you think about authentication, this is broadly the idea that at the point of creation, you seal something in the DNA of that content, whether it's made by AI or not. So it's kind of a cryptographic hash, which shows how that piece of information or content was made. And this is much more than a watermark. A watermark can kind of be removed or edited. This is, like I say, in the DNA of that content. It's called secure capture or secure signing. There's different ways to do it. You can either do it with a cryptographic hash, you can do it on a blockchain. I think the former is better than the latter. But it's not enough to just kind of have this information about the context of information, the content of information in the kind of DNA of content, because that might be there, but you need to be able to see it too, right? You need people to be able to see that nutritional label wherever they encounter content online. So the next step is about developing an open standard to actually bake into the architecture of the internet, the infrastructure, so people can see that nutritional label pop up when they need to. And that open standard is actually already being developed by a nonprofit organization called the C2PA, of which Adobe, Microsoft, Intel, ARM, Trupic, a company that I advise, which does kind of the secure capture hashing technology, are all founding members. And what's really interesting is that some of the biggest kind of generative AI companies have now committed to signing their AI generated content and becoming adherent to that open standard. So I think the way, again, this is going to take some time because it's about reimagining the very kind of backbone and the architecture of the internet ecosystem. But I think the way this is going to evolve is that there is going to be one version of the internet where you can see content credentials, where you can see transparency about the information and the content that you trust. Does that mean that everything online will have content credentials? No. But then you can make a trust decision on, do you want to trust a video that has no content credentials and you don't know where it came from? Arguably not, because if you're a good player, you would want to be transparent about the origins of your content.
So I guess it's almost like trusted maybe is a Web3 type of browsing engine versus a Web2 that you can kind of make your own judgment call and kind of take everything with a grain of salt.
Exactly. And it's about giving people the tools to be critical without becoming cynical. Because once you tip into cynicism, right, and you don't trust that anything is real anymore, well, that's pretty bad, both from a political perspective, but also from an economic perspective. And you're all business people, and you need to have access to trusted information, trusted content. You can't make decisions otherwise. We talk about this in a political context, but it's just as important in a personal context and in the enterprise and business context too.
Great. So with the ongoing heated discussions on AI's broad use without technological or really legal safeties, what is your outlook on the future of humanity in the era of AI?
So today we've kind of done a bit of a deep dive on deepfakes, right? Which is one kind of form of generative AI. And it's a form of generative AI, which is, usually used for malicious use cases. But more broadly, when you think about AI, and AI has been getting a little bit of a bad rap in the press these days because the media narrative that has been dominant almost every single day has been the so-called kind of AGI scenario, the scenario when AI takes over and, there's an existential or extinction risk because we humans have lost control of the AI. And that narrative has just been played over and over and over for the past 6 months. Now, I have to say that this is a speculative scenario, which is hypothetically possible, just like it's hypothetically possible that, an asteroid will crash into Earth and there'll be a big extinction event that way. But it would be remiss of me and it would be irresponsible of me not to discuss the other side of AI. So we talked about kind of deepfakes, which is the malicious use of AI. And we've talked about kind of the extinction risk, which you kind of see in the media every day. But AI is potentially a technology that has the potential to uplift humanity in ways that we just have not been able to conceive of before. One, because if you think about generative AI, and people don't associate ChatGPT and deepfakes in the same sentence, but they really are manifestations of the same type of AI, right? AI that can create, AI that can generate. But generative AI is going to transform all knowledge work forever. All kind of human creative and intelligent work can now be, you can think of generative AI as a kind of co-pilot to assist human endeavor in this aspect. So there's going to be tremendous abundance created by artificial intelligence. There was a report that came out from McKinsey just last week that looked at potential productivity gains through generative AI in just 63 different areas. And they quantified that it could add up to $4.2 trillion to the economy annually, okay, just per annum. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of abundance, productivity, and money to be had through kind of the enterprise applications of AI. But it's not only that. If you start thinking about it as a medium for knowledge and research, some very fascinating and interesting things happening, for instance, in biotech, where generative models are now being used to discover new drugs, to create new medicines for things like cures like cancer, because of the way that it can just expedite the process of drug discovery, something that would have taken human researchers decades to do, now being expedited down to hours or days. So I'm really excited about the possibilities for cures for illnesses, really excited about the economic abundance, really excited about the potential for AI to combat aspects of climate change. Again, one of the most promising things I've seen is the development through the use of AI models for an enzyme to basically eat at plastics. So to kind of imagine what that could do for kind of the plastic waste you see in our oceans. Yeah. And ultimately, for me, when you talk about this technology's ability to change humanity, the big point is this. We're at this incredible juncture in our lives where the pace of exponential technology is going to be far more profound than anything we've experienced before. So we will experience more tech-led change than the entirety of humanity that came before us. Now, the top line is transformation, transition, and change, and that can be scary. And there's no doubt that technologies as powerful as this will be weaponized and used maliciously. But that is just a story to me that's as old as humanity. You know, ever was it thus? But of course, the tools keep on becoming more powerful. But I don't think we're at the point where we've lost our agency. So this narrative that the AI is taking over and we've absolutely lost our agency and we have no say, I want to really push back strongly on that, because we do have a say, and we have this unique moment in history, I would say, in the next decade, to lay down the foundations to decide how this technology is going to be integrated into the framework of societies.
So there's hope.
There's hope. There's hope. I'm the optimist. Yes.
That's great. Oh, that's good to know.
I think rather than being concerned about, you know, the AI is going to kill us, the more important question is who controls these systems and to what ends, and how are they deploying them? Because again, ultimately, this is a story about humanity, right? This isn't a story of us losing our agency because some kind of autonomous computer now has all the control. It's still people and organizations and well-resourced actors and nation states who have the control. So for me, the more interesting story, and perhaps the more pivotal point as to how this ends up going, will be, okay, how do we ensure accountability? How do we ensure transparency? How do we ensure safe frameworks for ethical, fair, non-discriminatory use? Those are all the age-old questions that we've been asking ourselves in society anyway, which is truth to power, accountability, and making sure that all kind of the resources and the abundance are not monopolized by a few well-resourced players.
Well said.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, that brings us to our game time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So for this game, we wanted to play this or that for our audience to get to know you a little better. So I will ask you two options and you say your first choice. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Text or call?
Oh, text. I hate it when people, it offends me when people call me without texting me. Only my parents are allowed to do that. And my husband. I'm like,
and then they leave you a voicemail.
It's like, oh my God, my dad loves leaving me 7-minute voicemails. I told him today, I don't listen. I was like, just text me. Yeah.
We almost have these conversations with our parents.
Yeah.
Beach or snow?
Beach.
Beach. Outspoken or diplomatic?
I think there's a moment for each, right? I love a little bit of diplomatic kind of maneuvering, very sophisticated, but sometimes you just got to say it, right? So I think there's a moment for each approach. Yeah.
Twitter or Facebook?
Neither.
Okay.
Quit Facebook. Yeah, quit Facebook a long time ago. And Twitter is just a dead zone these days. So I'm still waiting for the rejuvenation. I'm waiting for it to be great again.
Megan or Matrix?
Megan
is that movie that just came out, the AI nanny, or there was like a little girl's protector.
Yeah, like a companion. It's pretty scary, actually. I saw the trailer. It's kind of creepy.
Okay, sounds rubbish. It sounds like another like kind of AI doomsday thing. Okay, yeah. I haven't watched Megan. I haven't seen the trailer, so I'm going to go for Matrix because that is just one of the all-time greats, and it's from the. Is it from the 90s? Is it from the early 2000s?
I think the first one was probably like late 90s, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. One of the best decades. So I'm going to go for the Matrix.
Always early or right on time?
Oh, so obviously now that I have a very busy speaking schedule, I have to always be early. But I think my natural proclivity would almost tend towards a little bit late. I have some Asian genes in me. We're less, but the other half is German, and we're extremely strict about our timekeeping. So I guess right on time then.
Okay. Yoga retreat or music festival?
Oh, yoga retreat, definitely. No doubt.
Fresh fruit or fresh flowers?
Ooh, tricky. Both. We have a lot of fresh fruit in the house because I have young kids who just eat so much. Yeah. I'm like, I want some blueberries too, but there's never any left. But love the fresh flowers. Yes.
Mac or PC?
Mac. No doubt. Although it's interesting how Microsoft has suddenly become the sexy tech company. In a lot to do with their investments in AI.
Yeah, I was going to say once they acquired ChatGPT, so sure.
Yeah.
TED Talk or master class?
TED Talk still. TED Talk. They're free. It's accessible. For masterclass, you have to have a subscription. And I have to say that when I have subscribed, I was a little bit, there were amazing masterclasses, but I was like, I just want more. They're just, there wasn't as much content as I hope. Maybe that's changed recently. Nothing beats the TED Talk though.
Aisle seat or window seat?
Aisle, just because if you have to go to the bathroom, I hate being like, or excuse me. Oh yeah, go. Yeah, no, definitely aisle. Just for that reason. Yeah.
Cat or dog?
Dog. Cats are just moody, aren't they? If I have to have a pet, which is, I love animals. I grew up with pets. I grew up with dogs, actually, and a few cats. But, it's a commitment. So I would like my pets to be appreciative and, be like making me feel good and like they want to spend time with me rather than a sassy cat who just wants to leave and just go away, human. Yeah, definitely a dog.
No attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Although you don't have to give the cats walks, I guess. So, yeah.
Rock and roll or German techno?
German techno.
What is German techno, and how is that different from regular techno? Or is all techno German?
Oh, German techno. Well, they're just like a pioneer in techno, and German, if you like that kind of music, you definitely want to be going clubbing in Germany. Wow. Yeah
Nice.
It's like, I guess like Detroit in the US would be like a similar level of like house and techno, and yeah German techno.
You just like listen to Barry Manilow.
Not that.
Cool. Not that. I've been listening to some good music.
There's nothing wrong with Barry Manilow.
What? Okay. Is that the good music you've been listening to Barry Manilow? Oh,
she's just making fun of me.
I just tease him all the time, but it keeps our marriage going. Super hearing or supervision?
Supervision. Wait, what would that? You need to clarify. But so, what could you do with super hearing? You could just like listen into any conversation in the world.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Probably.
And what would supervision give you? You can see anything.
See anything.
Yeah.
And if you have supervision, can you also hear?
I think,
or you just can't hear.
Yeah, but I think you can hear. Yeah, but not super.
You
can't have super hearing.
Then it has to be supervision because you can still hear, but you can also see, and that can help you infer perhaps what you're seeing. Although it might all be,
might all be fake content. Yeah,
exactly. It could all just be deep fake content.
Concert or movie?
Movie.
Dine in or take out?
Dine in. My husband's a very good cook. If he's cooking, dine in.
Nice.
Dress up or dress down?
Dress up. Dress up. Although, after COVID, I was like, I just want to live in leisure wear. Like, sweaty Betty leggings for the rest of my life.
Uber or Lyft?
Uber, just because we don't really have Lyft here in the UK, or maybe we do, but Uber is the big thing here. Although it seems to be declining in its quality.
Pearls or diamonds?
Maybe one good diamond and then other pearls.
Good answer. Walk or run?
Walk, definitely. I'm not into running. No.
Plan it or wing it?
Ooh, good time for each, I guess, because sometimes if you plan it, it's just too, manicured. Sometimes there's a little bit of room for just winging it. Great things can happen. But of course, great planning can lead to great results.
Zoom call or in office?
Have to say, I do love the Zoom call for helping me connect to people all around the world, but there is something about just meeting people in person, right? It's so much better.
Singing or dancing?
Dancing to the German techno.
Of course.
Yeah, we have to check that out. Playlist or podcast?
Playlist. I've been listening to some good 90s playlists recently. The decade of my youth.
Lose your keys or lose your phone?
I'm doing both all the time. Actually, I've been pretty good about not losing my phone for the last few years, but keys, that is just, that's a low point for me.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Know it all?
Sunset.
Know it all or have it all?
Have it all. Nobody likes a know-it-all, but be a humble have-it-all. Humble have-it-all.
Right. Fame and fortune or love and wisdom?
Love and wisdom. Any day.
Oh, this was fun. Thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. If you want to learn more about generative AI, please pick up Nina Schick's book, Deep Fake. And if you want to learn more about how AI is being implemented in business or about any other new tech, visit mettel.net or contact your Mettel sales representative.